Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be going over section 2.3, which is the last section that you have on your upcoming quiz, and it's also going to be the last section that we cover for exam 2. I think that looking at static notes for this one, it's going to be difficult to kind of recreate what I'm doing in this video here, so I thought I would make this video so that you can work along with me and try to draw the same things that I'm drawing. By the time this video's up, you'll have completed notes that you can follow along with, or if you want to grab your own sheet of paper and just try to draw what I'm drawing on here, you'll have a better idea of what to do. Okay, I'm actually going to move this ever so slightly. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about the difference between 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point perspective drawings. Then I'll talk a little bit about how to identify if you're given 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point perspective drawings, how to tell the difference between them. And then for the last part, I'm going to answer a question that I posed way back at the beginning of section 2.2, where we ask how can we apply this information about the distance to our perspective drawing. So we had these 4 buildings. How do we take 10, 20, and 10 and apply that to a perspective drawing? And we'll end up using cross ratios for that. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to draw sort of all my lines over here, and then I'll draw the final product over here. So in order to draw a 1 point perspective, here's a 1 point perspective drawing. I'll draw mine in green over here. So what I've got now is just a regular cube without any sort of perspective skewing on it. All these lines are parallel on it. It's exactly how you would draw it in a 3D space that looks like this, X, Y, and Z. But that's not what we want right now. What we want is to have a perspective drawing that sort of imitates objects being far away if they're farther away from us. So in a 1 point perspective drawing, this front facing face here is going to stay exactly the same. So I'm just going to trace right over it. For the rest of these 3 lines here, I want all of them to converge on that vanishing point there. So I'm going to draw my line. Here's my vanishing point on the horizon here. I'll work with that one, that one there. So notice each of these diagonal lines that I've drawn here, none of them quite line up. It's possible for them to line up if you already had one of these lines pointing at your vanishing point, but notice that each of those diagonal lines is now different. For this one, you've got 2 options for how you want to make this look. You could bring this vertical line up, and then you could take that across. That'll give you a sort of perspective cube. But I think it looks a little better if you take this horizontal line here. So I'm going to bring that horizontal line over, and then I'm going to bring it down like that. Okay, great. So this drawing, and I'll do a quicker version of it over here. This drawing is the makings of our 1 point perspective drawing. So front face stays the same. All these lines line up here. Bring the horizontal across, bring it down vertically. So just this drawing here is what we're left with. And something to notice about our drawing here is that compared to my original cube that I've got here, notice that both the vertical and the horizontal lines are still vertical and horizontal. And that's going to be the way that you identify what might be a one-point perspective drawing, is that these lines here, just like they were in the original cube, are still vertical, and those horizontal lines are still horizontal. Those diagonal lines, again, they have different angles on them, but they did originally. But all my vertical lines in the front and the back are vertical. Horizontal lines in the front and back are horizontal. Okay, great. So that's what a one-point perspective looks like. For a two-point perspective, I'm going to take this point here, but we are going to start off by sort of reimagining this face here. We're going to kind of redraw this face here, and then we're going to redraw this face over here. We've got two vanishing points here, one on the left of the object and one on the right of the object. So if we're going to reimagine those two faces on there, we're actually going to start off just by keeping this line that connects those two faces that we want to reimagine. So I'll draw these in two different colors here. So over on the left, we're kind of picturing what these two lines I've got here and here, we're reimagining what those are going to look like over here. And then over on this side, we're taking those two diagonal lines and we're setting them over to that one here. Now, this one I think is easy enough to tell where we should be drawing that vertical line there. So I'm just going to draw it, right, sort of exactly where you would expect it to be. This one, we may have lost sight of the original object, but remember, these green lines that I've drawn are these lines here. That's what we're trying to recreate on here. So that horizontal line, I'm going to keep that horizontal line right there. Or sorry, that vertical line. That vertical line that was right here, I'm going to extend that up there. Now, for the next part of this, we've got those two faces, right? Like we have those two faces that we wanted to recreate. Now those are recreated in our perspective drawing. But we need to figure out what the top of this shape looks like. And we don't want to make parallelograms, right? We still want to take these vanishing points into account. So I'm going to take this corner that I figured out and say, well, this corner also has to vanish over here. This corner also has to vanish over here. So now I can see the top of my building is going to be made by this face here. Okay. So I'm just going to recreate that, and then I'll show you just the shape that I'm going to be making here. So. All right, so start off with my line. That's connecting the two faces I want to recreate. Those corners, right face goes to the right edge. Left face goes to the left vanishing point. I'm going to extend my vertical lines up. So that gives me this line, and this vertical line comes up here to be that line. So kind of doing the steps in order: orange, purple, green, and then these black lines here. So those black lines, remember, those are going to connect each of these corners to the opposite vanishing point over there. So now the parts of the drawing that we're interested in are going to be spot here to here to here. Now, I made a slight mistake here that I'm going to attempt to fix here. I actually didn't make this line quite vertical enough, and it's going to bug me if I don't fix it. All right, so not quite vertical. Okay, great. So, 2-point perspective. What told us it was a 1-point perspective was that our horizontal and vertical lines were maintained. Here for a 2-point perspective, so for a 2-point perspective, we say that the only the vertical lines are maintained. In the perspective drawing. Okay. 3-point. We've got 2 points on the horizon, and then we actually have a third vanishing point down at the bottom here. So the way that I like to start these ones is to just get a 2-point perspective drawing going. So I'm going to start with a 2-point perspective. So kind of draw all that in the orange here. Okay. Extend my horizontal lines, or vertical lines rather. vertical line, vertical line. And then I take those corners that I've created. So we'll just say we can start with a 2 point. Right, that's what's happening in the orange. And then the next step for this one is going to be figuring out how to kind of skew all those vertical lines on there. So what we're going to do for these vertical lines, there's only 3 of them visible, right? These ones, but we want to take those vertical lines and start at the far edge and connect each of them down to our bottom vanishing point. So what we're left with here is a 3-point perspective drawing where we can trace out the shape of what started off as a 2-point, but we're replacing all of these vertical lines with our new vertical lines here. Okay, so I'm going to recreate that over here. Okay, this is a slightly new drawing. I did have to move this point over in order to make the example work out a little better for this one, but right, anywho. I'm going to recreate this drawing over here. Okay, so I am making my 2-point perspective drawing over here. I'm going to choose some colors that will hopefully help out here. Okay. So everything from over here, I'm going to draw in green. Everything from over here, I'll draw in orange. I do have to recreate that box up top here. Oops. Not enter, but so I'm going to draw these in a slightly different color than I did the last time, because I want to focus on what vanishing point each of these are connected with, and that'll help us sort of draw the perspective drawing that we want. Okay, so all these orange lines going over this vanishing point, all these green lines going to this vanishing point over here. And then I sort of held off on drawing these ones the same way that I did in a 2-point perspective drawing, because I wanted to connect all of them like this. So we'll start with this one over here. And I'm taking each of these lines that were originally vertical. I notice that's not quite vertical anymore. And I'm just shifting them over like this. Okay. So with these colors that I've got here, again, this was all coming from this top part here. That's where all those blue lines are originating from. In order to make these faces on here, let's think about the top face first. So the top face of our perspective drawing that's going to use the that top face is going to be using the orange that's going to use the orange and green. This right face is going to use the green and blue lines. And what I'll call, this is maybe our front face. That uses the orange and blue. Okay, so what I mean to say by that is we can take this drawing. I actually think I want to recreate it down here. So what I mean by that is I want to take, for my top face, I want to use just these lines. That's identical to what it would look like in the 2-point perspective. And then I'll do the front face next, so that's going to use the blue and orange lines. And then for this one, I get to use the green and blue lines. So that'll be this one here. And this one here. It may not be immediately obvious with this one, but the effect that we get from this, actually I'm going to redraw that one so we can get a better feel for this. See how it sort of juts out a little bit like that. But we get this almost a trapezoid looking shape up top here. But that is our 3-point perspective. So things to notice about this one. Is that our neither the horizontal or the vertical lines horizontal lines are preserved. So 1-point perspective, vertical and horizontal are maintained. 2-point perspective, vertical lines only are maintained. 3-point perspective, neither of those two. This is our 3-point perspective. Okay. Looking over here as well, I just want to remind everybody of the process that we went through. So we are going to start with two-point perspective, and then these dark lines here trace from the top face to the third vanishing point. Great. All right, so let's try to answer this question. Is this 1, 2, or 3-point? Perspective. And then we've actually got a fourth option. None of the above. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's start with this one over here on the right. So I look at this one and I see the fact that vertical and horizontal lines are maintained, definitely in the front. So I see vertical lines that still appear vertical to me. I see horizontal lines that still appear horizontal to me. So I'm going to call this one 1-point perspective. Right. Reason why we have both vertical and horizontal. One other thing we do want to check on here, because we have a none of the above option here, I do just want to give a rough drawing to the remaining lines to make sure that they have a vanishing point that makes sense. So I'm just going to kind of lightly sketch. This is something you can do visually as well. I am working on a software. I'm not sure if Preview, the software Preview that's on the Mac computers, if you're allowed. I think there's an annotating where you can sort of draw like this on there. But there's going to be some questions that I do want to allow people to, draw on for themselves. Okay. Let's see. Do I see any like super not straight lines in this drawing that I've created here? Do I think I'm fudging things to an unnecessary degree? I don't think so. I think this is fine. This makes sense that we have a vanishing point up here. I can confirm it with some straight lines here. I just wanted to show you that you can sort of ballpark it. Let me line these up properly. Okay, so looking at these, I would say that, yeah, we're looking at this vanishing point here. There's a little bit of error, right? You can see I kind of worked from one side to the other, but it makes sense that this has a single vanishing point on there, so I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Just get a nice clean vanishing point check on here. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay. All right, so here we are, 1 point perspective on here. I'll buy that. For this one, let's see. For this one here, I see some vertical lines that are maintained, but not any horizontal lines on here. So to me, that says 2 point perspective. I would say 2 point perspective for this one, but I do want to double check, right? We should visually be able to kind of see where the see those lines are coming to a point that makes sense for us. Okay, so that meets at that point there. Again, just ballparking, right? We should be able to tell. We'll come across a phony one that'll be really obvious that we've got that situation. But I'm going to take this line and sort of continue it. Hey, it looks like it's lining up pretty well. This line from the top here also seems like it's going to connect there. So I think if all those lines line up with 2 vanishing points on here, we can say 2 point perspective, and that passes the vanishing point test. Okay, for this next one, it looks like for this one, we do not have anything maintained, right? No vertical lines, no horizontal lines. You can see from this one over on the side here. So let's make some lines on this one, just see if they are matching up with what we would expect. Hey, those match up. Great. And those lines, not perfect, but I can see where I made my mistake there. We do need to check that third point if we're going to call this a 3-point perspective drawing. So let's check our vanishing point down here. Okay. Yeah, so I think this one, we can safely say this is a 3-point. Perspective. We've got no vertical or horizontal lines. It is possible, so for this one you can maybe picture that it's possible to have a single vertical or a single horizontal line, but we want that set of 3 visible ones, right? Like that's really what it tells us. We're looking at 1, 2, or 3 points. So no vertical or horizontal lines, but it passes the vanishing point test. Great. I did want to show you this example here of one that is a none of the above kind of situation. Let's see if I can carefully extract this one over here. Okay, good. Okay, so for this one, we've got no V or H. So we could guess 3-point. But when we go to do our vanishing point test, and I'm going to draw these lines really sloppily here. Just extending them down. So it looks like this vanishing point makes sense. I could ballpark it and say, yeah, lines up well enough. This one over here lines up well enough. Yeah, I can see where those are going. All right, they're all heading over here. Yeah, sure. They're all going over there. This one, however, I've got 1, 2, and then this line over here is kind of pointing off in a direction that is definitely not going to line up with these two. So I'll highlight those in red and say, no, we've got this line here. We'll say no, that can't be it. No, it does not pass. The vanishing point test. So we have to say that it's, so therefore it's not none of the above. And just a quick comparison. This one here, all those three lines are pointing to this vanishing point. Here, only two of them end up connecting at all. I think this one might never line up with this one up here. And certainly not in the same spot. If you've drawn enough of these too, you can kind of tell. Like if I look at these two and kind of, close my eyes and mix them up a little bit. Yeah, you can see one of these seems a little off. Like this one, they all the 3-point perspective drawings look a little strange in my opinion, but this one has, you can kind of say, well, what's going on with this? My eye immediately catches this thing and says, what's going on with this edge down there? Okay. Last thing I want to do, again, I want to talk about this kind of problem here, but here's the setup for this one. And I think I'll type this one out because it's a little wordy. So we have two identical blue bricks are lined up side by side. They each measure 50. Let's go with 50 millimeters in length. The perspective drawing that's a 1-point perspective, is drawn on the right. In the drawing, the first brick measures 3 units long, meaning that, well, we can use 3 units long. And the second brick measures 2 units long. So what I mean by that is these are the same 2 bricks, right? I'm just drawing them in a perspective drawing, and I'm telling you that, hey, this one looks like it's 3 units long. This one looks like it's 2 units long. If you took a ruler on your drawing, this one would be 3 units long. This one would be 2 units long. So the question that I want to ask is, I'll copy everything here. The question I want to ask is, if I introduce a third pink brick. Also 50 millimeters long. How long should the pink brick be in the drawing to the right? Okay. So what I am picturing here is now I've got this in reality, right? If I'm measuring this, I've got this pink brick, same size, over here on the right. And I want to know what its measurements are going to need to be. Okay, so that one's also, right, 50 units. If I draw it over here, I'm going to end up with right, this sort of pink brick here. Okay, so we can think about what are the dimensions of that pink brick going to be, or basically solving for x down here, right? What is this going to be? In order to break this down, I'm going to take just this drawing and talk a little bit about some specific parts of it. So there's kind of a lot going on in this part of the drawing, but I'm just going to copy this and recreate it over here. So I'm going to get rid of a lot of this, right? I'm just interested in really just interested in this part of it. So I've got x, I've got 2, x, 2, and 3 here, right? In order to figure this out, we're going to use the fact that all these bricks are in actuality the same length, but I'm going to take this part of the drawing and figure out where my vanishing point is. So my vanishing point is going to be somewhere up here. So turn that a little off base there. Can't seem to get a good handle on this one. There we go. Okay, so it seems like my vanishing point, if I can draw a nice big one here to get that point across. Here's my vanishing point for this one. What I'm going to do is take that vanishing point and I'm going to create a second temporary vanishing point. And I'm going to bring that all the way over here. All right. So that vanishing point I'm going to label that. I'm going to label that one over here. I'm going to call this V2. Call that my temporary vanishing point. And then I know that this is X, 2, and 3. I'm going to bring each of these points each of these 4 points over like this. So notice that second vanishing point is also on the horizon there. Now I'm not drawing a 2-point perspective here. I'm just making a temporary vanishing point to give myself some perspective. Sorry, I know I spent all that time making this, but I think it's got to go. Once I have my temporary vanishing point, I can take those lines that I made and extend them down onto this line here. So take those lines, bring them down here. And I'm realizing I should have drawn this a tiny bit shorter. All right, but that's kind of why we're doing this in some sense, right? Is we're trying to get an idea of how long we should draw this. Now I can take a line that's perpendicular to this one. So I'm going to place it somewhere down here. And if this is my actual original object, I can say that at some point along here, if this is 50, and this is 50, and this is 50, right? Those kind of represent my original 3 bricks that I'm trying to find here. So 50, 50, and 50. 50, 50, and 50. In the drawing, they'll end up being 3, 2, and X, using this as a vanishing point. So I'm going to simplify this drawing after copying it, but Again, I kind of want to show as many steps as possible. Sometimes I look back at my notes and I say, oh, well, that's got not nearly enough information written down on it. It just looks like a completed drawing, so I want to try to give you as much information as I can. Okay, so things I'm interested in from my original drawing. I want this these lines here, and I know that these distances are going to be 3, 2, and X. Okay. So create a second vanishing point, find the original vanishing point, create a second vanishing point that's horizontal to it, extend those lines down to a parallel line that's also horizontal down here. This should look very familiar to you. Right now we're looking at, right, we could call this A, B, C, and D, B prime, C prime, B prime, A prime. And we can proceed as normal. So I'll go ahead and show that just for completeness sake, and that'll be the end of the video. All right, so we know, well, first of all, if we're really clever about it, we can say that ABCD, that cross ratio, is equal to 4/3. We could figure it out and say, you know, AB over AD and so forth, but we know that it's going to be 4/3 since the points are evenly spaced. So then we can say that that 4/3 is also going to apply to these spots here. So we'll say 4/3 is also equal to A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime. That cross ratio. So we'll say 4/3 is equal to, let's see, all cows bring dairy. All dogs bite cats. Try to pick some nice numbers here. For us to use, so let's see what we end up with. A to C is going to be X plus 2. A to D is going to be X plus 5. B to D is going to be 5. And B to C is going to be 2. Not bad. Not bad. Multiply by both my denominators. That's going to give me 4/3 times 2 times X plus 5 is equal to X plus 2 times 5. This 2 and the X plus 5 are just coming from down here. So this is 8/3 times X plus 8/3 times 5. 40 over 3. 8 times 5 divided by 3. That's going to be equal to 5x plus 10, if I do my distributing right. I think I can do at least part of this by hand. I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So I get 8x plus 40 is equal to 15x plus 30, just by multiplying by 3. So over here, I'm going to get, let's see, I'll put my x terms over here. So 40 minus 30, that'll be 10. And then 15 minus 8x, that'll be 7x. So it looks like x is equal to 10 over 7. I'll open up my calculator. This looks like 10 over 7 is 1.43. So this measurement, 3, 2, this should measure 1.43 or 10/7 in the drawing here. I did not need to rely on drawing this accurately. You can kind of see that's why what I'm calling evenly spaced here isn't evenly spaced, but that is the process. All right, we just kind of make some assumptions and then find equations that make that fit. All right. That is it for section 2.3. All 3 subsections are covered on here. The one thing that you may encounter is a problem where you're asked some true or false questions about vanishing points on here. Again, I'm going to figure out before you take your exam over spring break, I'm going to talk with the Emporium and try to figure out something like, the question might ask, is this the vanishing point or is this the vanishing point? And visually, you should be able to do it. I did, about 30 of them and was able to get them right consistently after some practice. But I can see how even if you're just working visually, you may want those lines just to have that peace of mind about it. So anyway, I'll talk with the Emporium to see if I can get you set up with some kind of annotating thing so you can draw lines on them. But that's all I've got, so I will see you after the break is over.